So, what I want to talk about first in the program is the idea of taking risks. Because when you're talking about doing more with less, you're doing things that are not necessarily conventional, right? You're doing things that are, you know, to be unexpected. It's uncharted territory. There's no manual. It's not like, from page 86 to page 105, this is how you do it. You kind of have to, like you said, take risks. But I would imagine, just like I know from my own experience, I know from my experience, and from plenty of other people, that risk is not necessarily appreciated, right? You can work in an organization and playing safe or being conservative, doing your job as someone might think, or what they think your job should be, is the way to go. So the idea of taking risk is something that you would need to get your leadership buy-in. That could be your board, it could be your supervisor. It's not something you can necessarily do in a vacuum. Even yourself, who came in as the one employee, so you report to any other staff person, but you have to report to a board. And I'm sure when they were drafting your job description, they had a pretty, good idea of what they wanted you to do, what they didn't want you to do. And I don't think they imagined you getting onto the Ellen, doing stuff with Ellen DeGeneres or doing stuff with Glenn Beck was, built into that job description. So I'm curious to know, what your thoughts are on how you took on the risk and how it worked vis-a-vis the leadership and getting their buy-in, and any techniques, any thoughts on like what any of our listeners or people who are watching from home, what they can do to take risks and apply themselves. But just as a caveat before you answer that question, we have a Q&A box open underneath the video screen. If you have any questions for Mark or myself during this segment about taking risks, feel free to respond. But I'm going to turn it back to Mark now to talk a little bit about his guidance on taking risks, because as you know, anyone who wants to make big change has to take some risks. You can't play it safe, and being able to do that is something that is, of course, by definition, outside of one's comfort zone. So what are some of your thoughts on that, Mark?
Let me just tell you, it's a journey, and it is a scary journey, but it's rewarding. And I feel like you can't be an effective leader if you don't take calculated risks. You have to determine that the finish line is the most important thing you can do right now, and that means that you may take a step backwards to get two steps forward. My wife and I went to a little town called Ocala. It's just outside of Orlando, about an hour, and we're on our way home after a show, and the iPhone map said that we needed to go this other way, which was way out of the path that we had come on. And we thought, oh, this is so stupid. Why is iPhone doing this? And so we took the chance that we knew what we were doing. And what happened was the road was closed in the evening for road construction. And we got detoured about 45 minutes out of the way and got home at a very insane late hour of the morning. And I had to think about, like, what would have happened if we would have just done what they told us to do. We would have been home before midnight. But because we took that risk, we learned. And for me, it was a lesson I learned. Obey iPhone map. Now, why do I say all that? Because, like I said before, it's a journey that you're on. And you have to realize that, like, I've worked in research now for quite a while in my career. And it's like, you have to understand that you're going places that's never been gone to before. And you have to be willing to take those risks. Jonah mentioned about reporting to a board or to have a person that supervises you. I think the most important thing you can take away from this today is always communicate. Have an open door of communication, letting people know what's going on so that you can manage those expectations, so that there's no surprises. Because the last thing I want from a staff member is for them not to tell me something's going on. I find out in the news, or I find out through a donor. The same thing is true of your board or your boss, and communicate with them what's going on. Give them an opportunity to buy into it, because just like with Glenn, when I presented, we had a national convention before the foundation closed, and I invited Glenn to be the keynote speaker, because to me, I felt like he was an individual that had expressed both a commitment to our cause. he had an audience that he could draw from, and it was kind of like a reward for him for doing all the good that he had done for our foundation. He had the highest celebrity status of somebody that I had a personal relationship with, that I could like personally ask, Glenn, would you do this for us? And when I told the board, our local newspaper literally went crazy. They blasted me. They nailed me up on the wall. Said I had ruined the foundation because of the reputation that it had had versus what its reputation was after asking Glenn to come speak. And I made sure that the message I had was always consistent. This is about the cancer patient, the families that are dealing with all these treatments. We've got to have a better way. And if Glenn hates cancer and he hates current treatments and he loves us, he's qualified to speak.
Yeah.
Put those political and personal opinions aside. Think of the patient. And so it was not a unanimous approval to have Glenn come. Several board members didn't boycott the convention, but they were not smiling during the convention. And that's okay. They were there. And you know what? I mean, that was their prerogative. But it was a successful, sold out event. And the newspaper turned around and wrote on the headlines above the fold, the day of the convention, the Kansas Faces 2013, I think it was, a complete success. So it was a risk. It was a scary moment to present this to the board, especially after I had to call a special meeting because of all the newspaper articles and the op-eds and the letters to the editors and my funeral announcement, all these kind of things. It was like, but you have to know and you have to believe in what you're doing and that you're moving that mission forward.